Hey, welcome everyone to another weekly edition of Account-Based Friday. Super excited. We've got a special guest joining us today from California, Matt Harney. Good morning, Matt. He's the founder of Cloudratings, and I got really excited to not only invite Matt, but just a little backstory before we get into our weekly poll as people join in here. A little backstory on how I met Matt. I have a passion for the financial use case of marketing. For whatever reason, I was on Twitter and I stumbled across Matt's content, and his content was stellar. I felt like it was the missing link between kind of the marketing leadership and CFO to have the conversation around benchmarks, around the financial understanding of marketing or the business as a whole. And the more I followed him, the more I got enthralled with the content that he was producing, particularly as it relates to SaaS. Some of his content was just, it blew my doors off. And so I started a relationship with Matt. One thing led to another. And here we are, not only in this area, but we're looking at alternative ways to collaborate. And Matt, really excited to have you join us today. Each week we start off with a poll. And this week's poll, we ask about benchmarks, which is tightly aligned to Matt's area that he's looked at. And we're going to ask Matt to introduce himself. But before we do, let's just talk briefly about this poll. Where is the value of benchmarks in the marketing process? And I'm curious, Meg, when you looked at this poll, what was your reaction to what you saw here?
Yeah, well, I actually wavered between extremely valuable and somewhat valuable for this reason. You can never walk into a budget discussion or any discussion that requires some understanding of context to whatever it is you're asking for, trying to make a case for, trying to, assign a value to. You always have to go in with benchmarks. The thing that is tricky is they won't win the day. They are essential. They have to be part of your discussion, but there's also a certain amount of context, storytelling, persuasion, and case building that has to go along with it. So you can't just come in and say, software companies always invest X amount of money in marketing and expect your CFO to be like, well, okay, cool. You're going to have to go in and say, what's the context for the benchmark that I'm showing you? Is it relevant to our market? Is it appropriate for our stage of growth? Is it, there's many different factors to consider, but if you walk in without that basic foundation, you're setting yourself up for failure, which is, why I'm excited, Matt, that you're here with us today. And I love your background because you're not coming at this as, a career marketer or, and you're coming at it really from more of an investor and a financial perspective, which to me, hey, that's the advice we all need. So maybe tell us a little bit about how, your background and how you came to found your company. I think it would be great to hear.
Sure. My background, very traditional finance, started in investment banking, then went into private equity at Ares Management. And from there, and I was a generalist, worked on distressed companies, oil and gas, media, engineering, construction. And when I went to start a boutique private equity firm with a partner, we were betting our careers and identified software because we were looking for things with recurring revenue and attractive opportunities that we could buy at a small scale. And we're fortunate enough to buy two SaaS companies at attractive valuations. We started this in 2009, grew them and successfully exited them. And through that, I got exposure to the business of software. And I was fascinated by cold email. And we were looking at installing Marketo. And this was, the early days of SaaS. And I just loved it. And ever since then, I've been investing in software companies on the public side, occasionally in the private side. And have just stayed exposed, reading blogs, reading all the content, reading all the benchmark reports. I've been reading the KeyBank report since it came out. And so I've been current with the industry and identified some gaps, both on the content side and then kind of on the industry side in the analyst market. Started Cloudratings very beginning of 2003. We produce our own versions of Magic Quadrants, a lot of coverage of the GTM sector, where we intentionally try to add value. In today's world, there is lots of review sprawl across Capterra, G2, Gartner Peer Insights. And for the top of the funnel, beginning of the buying journey, we think we can add some value in terms of aggregating that, but more importantly, adding information to those in the form of a request for information. So we work with vendors to get their NPS scores, churn, revenue, ACVs, so that the grids and quadrants we produce are very much informed by that, because there can be real discrepancies in what you would see just if you took the number of reviews on G2. That doesn't always correlate to the actual number of revenue amounts, just differences in contract sizes or who's good at getting reviews. Same thing with NPS. There can be some real divergences there. So we do that. And then I've always, even back to my investing days, been absolutely shocked by how little discussion there is, particularly in a quantified way, about ROI in the industry. Like when you think about all this transparency, you can see a benchmark for anything. Everyone talks about PLG, NRR, very little about the customer when it comes to like quantifying things. And perhaps because we were scared to death when we started our investment firm, and we were also very financial. We were, investment bankers, private equity guys, right? And we don't understand software particularly well, but we can, when we interview a management team, walk through, all right, what is the ROI of your product? Like, let's carefully go through it. And if someone buys this, what are they going to get back? Because we were trying to figure out retention, pricing power, and just simply what these things do. And one surprising finding was almost everyone struggled with that, right? Like people can talk collaboration, oh, there's some audit trail, there's productivity gains, but it's like, no, well, like if someone's paying you $1,000 a month, what do they get? What do they get? And you have to estimate, and you have to know your customers, you have to know your product, right? And most people can get 85, 90% of their way there, and then they get stuck. That last mile is where all the value is, right? In terms, and you have to go find benchmarks, right? Like we just did an ROI study with Relay 2. It's a digital sales room software, right? And the key benchmark there is like, what are typical industry win rates? Like how many times, MQLs converting to close customers, right? And then we took information we gathered from their customers and saw the win rate lift they had experienced. And then we're able to combine that with a third-party benchmark. And that was the single largest driver of the ROI of their product. And we were also able to figure out smaller items, right, that it also saves web designer time, right? Well, what's the national average and how much is each report consolidated? And all of that drums up to, if you hire or you purchase Relay 2, this is the benefit you're going to get. And as you all know, in the software marketplace, there's Forrester, who offers a total economic impact report, which is quite expensive and makes sense. It's a platinum brand. And then there's a handful of boutiques who provide these, who aren't particularly well known, in the industry. And I think there's like a gap for someone to offer these at an accessible price point. And we're bootstrapped. I'm not particularly financially motivated, thankfully, that we can offer these at a very attractive price, because there's a lot of middle market companies, there are a lot of enterprise companies. Because if you look at who hires Forrester for those, it truly is like the Oracle, Microsoft, VMware level, and then no one else. And when you think of, again, getting back to like the customer here, right, and the marketing, the messaging you need in 2024, where CFOs want to underwrite these purchases or even at renewals, right? A third party evaluation of this, or forget hiring us or working with us. Like I would encourage anyone, like go do the work and make the calculator, right? Go make the calculator and put it on your website. Like you will get a lot of value even just out of that exercise. And then there's a portion of your customers who do want that. So like push through, work at it, and get like those ROI calculators made. So there's my huge intro that closed with the sales pitch.
Well, I think you bring up a really great point about the cost of ownership of any product right now. And going into 2024 with the efficiency, that mantra that we're hearing everywhere right now of efficient spend. And there's still a lot of cautious kind of controlling, I think, from a CFO perspective. It's not like 2022 or 2021 where it was a free for all. Now I think there's a lot of caution, and your kind of ROI report, based on what I saw, where I could see it being extremely helpful, is making a business case for why this product and why now, whether it's the product that you own and you're selling to others, or you're trying to internally convince the CFO why invest in XYZ capability. You've got a lot of, I think, flexibility with that ROI report that could be valuable because it's so much of a lesser investment than that of the Forrester side of things. So I could see a ton of value in kind of what you're creating there. You've got, I kind of think of you as a data shop, right? Like you've got
Yep.
so many different data tentacles that are going on. And one of those data tentacles, I think, is also the employment side of things. So in addition to kind of the ROI side of things, maybe you're honing your data gathering or your data techniques around trends of hiring and firing, and maybe you could spend a moment talking about like either the process or what you're seeing there, especially from a marketing perspective, or how you think of it, or how you're going to chop that data up that may be valuable for a sales or marketing audience.
Sure. There's been just inherently with news around layoffs and kind of like some turbulence in the industry of like, well, what are the real employment trends? And we actually had a number of inbound requests. And I know you were quite interested in this information in the very earliest days and helped give us some good feedback. And so what we did is we took Apollo, the kind of Zoom info alternative, has some employment tracking within it, and created an index on top of that. And it covers over 3,500 companies. And we're able to segment that by stage, seed, Series A, all the way through E, private equity, headcount sizes, and also do it by function, like marketing and sales. Marketing and sales have been the most impacted. Some of those trends are moderating. And I would say the overall recap of what the data says is probably right in line with the narrative. It's a more red than green environment, where there's been more layoffs than hiring. Having said that, when you start zooming in on the report, and we'll share a copy of the December data that just came in, there still are companies growing and hiring about the same volume as companies conducting like meaningful layoffs. And that's true in marketing and sales. There's been a bit of an uptick in sales layoffs the last 2 months. But overall, the environment's not great. And as you see, kind of as companies grow, there's more diffusion, right? There's companies are separating that certain ones are growing very well, and then other ones are not. And that's reflected in what's happening with their employment. So we'll share the latest. I believe on Monday it just came in, and and that very likely will be an ongoing series with Pavilion. If you're a Pavilion member, that data is going to start being included in their monthly reports. I think John will also be contributing some commentary there on employment trends. He's closer to the real people. We're very data driven. Can't really speak to like what or who this is happening to always.
Matt, you're bringing up some really interesting points about the kinds of data that we should be looking at to truly evaluate a company and its potential and its current impact. And what I really like, to your point, is the emphasis on actual customer impact. Are you doing what you say you do, and can you prove it? How hard is it to get that data from, whether it's a client that comes to you wanting to build one of these reports or a report that you're building for general market consumption? Is that data that companies have reasonably accessible, or is it something you have to coach them on? How does that work?
You need to, I would say it's not that hard. An easy way to do it is just go look at your website, right? This is an important exercise by itself of if you were just a third party who showed up and, I did not have a particular expertise in digital sales rooms. I've never configured a digital sales room, but let me go to, Relay 2 and what messaging is on there? What are you saying? And then write down, if I just read this, what would I assume the drivers are? What are the biggest benefits of this product? And you have to narrow it down, right? That's one way the ROI exercise could go off the rails, is if you try and think of every feature and benefit, right? You got to learn. And if you're a product manager, you're an executive, you should know what your most important benefits are and focus on 3, 4, or 5 of those. And that's pretty much what customers will zone in on. Anything beyond that, they don't care about. Same thing with investors, right? If you're in a management meeting, you want to talk about benefit 19, they're going to zone out. They don't care, right? So focus on the important ones and then go conduct interviews with your customers, right? It doesn't take a ton of interviews, right? And keep them short, but try and tease out actual examples. What was your win rate before? And not everyone's going to give you, our win rate was 33% and now it's 48%. Of course, we changed systems and we had a, reorg. But if you do enough of these and you tease it out, right, and ask follow-ups, you can get enough. With one Relay 2 customer, a certain percentage of their deals completely skip the RFP process. And, obviously this was not covered in the customer interview, but that lent itself very easily to finding out, well, what are win rates on RFP deals, right? And in the amazing transparency of the software industry, there are good benchmarks out there, right? And then we were able to deconstruct the RFP win rate aspect. And so getting back to it, focus on the core drivers, have some confidence. That's the other limitation in that last mile, right? It's very easy to be paralyzed. I can't interpret significant, or is this benchmark good enough, right? Or is this the exact salary? A lot of these puts and takes will even out. And everyone knows that these ROIs fundamentally are for a composite customer. There's, pluses and minuses in it. But regardless of whatever weakness is, this is valuable work, right? Just to inform the discussion that, okay, it actually here's, the point in sand, the single source of truth. You buy this, you get 480%. And then, any kind, actually we're a little smaller and, we're not quite as big. Okay. It's going to come down to 375, 400, something like that. But it's far, far better than just collaboration, productivity that just doesn't make, maybe I've always been wired this way, is I don't understand what you're saying. I don't get what collaboration means.
Well, yeah, I think you're bringing up a really great point, especially at the end about what does collaboration mean. And this is the gap, I think, that a lot of us probably listening to this, my audience is typically sales and marketing. We have to kind of do that translation into people like you at the CFO level or investor level, and do that translation. And sometimes we forget, we get caught up in our own language and our own thinking. We don't do that translation, and we're spending all this energy talking in one language, and you're not, your persona is not absorbing that information because it just doesn't register. So I think you're right that having that ROI would be incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, I would just make the assumption that if you're interfacing with a finance executive or an investor, is they simply do not read. They skim for numbers, charts, and graphs is the first way the information's processed. and there's just going to be a certain level of blindness to all of this. Is they've seen case studies and it's everything just blends together and it's the collaborative. Like, what is this? Like, I just want to know something, right? And I see this when we evaluate products for ourselves. Like, we're a very small business, but we use marketing automation and the like, and get my share of pitches for things. And I'm not going to carefully digest whatever you're sending me or look at your website. Oh, okay. It's like, what's in it for me, right? And why exactly do I need to go make this a priority to go implement this, right? And if I saw an email that said like your SDR is going to spend 70% less time, right, that would capture my attention. But like, enhance the automation of your sales, I don't care.
Matt, two things jump out at me about what you just been saying. One is something that I used to advise both, my clients who were purchasing software and, when I was on the other side of it, trying to think about how to coach clients to be successful, which is tell them how they should be measuring that ROI right from the beginning. Like, say, okay, now take your before picture so that when things look beautiful 3 months from now, you're going to take an after picture. But no one's going to remember the before picture if you didn't take it and you didn't track it. And oh, by the way, here are the 5 things you need to be paying attention to. So I love that you're helping people think with that mindset of how am I, as the person who put myself on the line to make this purchase and then deploy it, going to be successful, and challenging your clients who are on the platform side or the SaaS side to say, how are you going to make your clients successful? How are you going to get to that data? But the second thing that I'm thinking about in your conversation is you can also sort of take the blinders away on markets where everything seems to be wonderful and there's a ton of hype, but maybe things aren't all what they seem underneath when you start to look at those really important factors, those quantitative factors that say whether or not people are getting, getting the proof from the promise. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about AI. There's so much out there, so much excitement, so much potential, but where are we in terms of the data you're seeing? Super curious.
I'm incredibly excited about AI and think very, very highly of its long-term potential. We literally just this morning published some research around interest trends in B2B specific AI applications, and overall the data there has been underwhelming, right? And I say underwhelming relative to the consensus and narratives, right? Where in 2023, pure play AI stocks were up 111%, $6 trillion of value created, right? And so there's a lot of embedded expectations that AI is going to be this transformative application that gets deployed soon, right? Because we're going to hit an air pocket, right? A lot of the deployments are in the second half 2024. Actually, some of them are shifting to 2025, right? And in absence of coming back and hearing ROI and benefits, right? Because at the enterprise level, you need, evidence that this stuff is working, right? Particularly for things to grow at this exponential rate. And the data we saw from again, search volume basis, but across 340 incumbents, 50 AI natives, a zoom in onto blue chips like Microsoft Copilot, Salesforce, Google Workspace, and then to a lesser extent at the category level, think more like AI for network security, AI for manufacturing, right? All of which are below peak. We saw a peak in the spring of 2023, and that interest level has not been sustained. Now, some of that is a function of company announcements and rollouts, right? But then the category level captures that. And then even the AI natives, because AI has been around for some time, even machine learning, right? And a lot of these AI venture capital companies were doing quite well, right, before ChatGPT came on the scene, right? But all in all, you haven't seen the acceleration that kind of, if you're on the investment side, you would want at this point in time for like a mega trend. Because if people were having great experiences and there was this great word of mouth, right, you would see the search is accelerating as people, okay, I heard someone had a great experience with HubSpot AI or Asana AI. Let me check that out, because they were the earliest adopters. They, figured it out in the first month, right? But here I am in month 4 or 5, and again, we're incredibly early. Let me go check it out. And at least from this one small vantage point, and there needs to be a lot of caveats around using search and things like this. But having said that, like, it was pretty underwhelming. Now, the other trend there is all of this interest is concentrated at what I call the atomic level, kind of like productivity enablers, more things like copywriting or using AI in Canva and like prosumer use cases and day-to-day productivity, as opposed to more compound applications, right? Where it's weaving together multiple AI functionalities into AI super apps. And it makes sense, right, for how new all of this is, and for, enterprise deployments and, functionalities to emerge. We're looking at everything in a matter of months here. So that's probably unrealistic to see those use cases, but like across the board, AI natives to incumbents, everything's kind of at the day-to-day productivity level. And so that itself is encouraging, because, there is real value in the AI tool I'm using. And then specific to this audience, marketing is there is real significant demand for these like copywriting tools and various AI tools. So there is real like sizable demand relative to other categories for marketing. I believe it was the number one interest area when we looked at it at a category level.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It almost sounds like it's the kind of the slope of the curve is to the trough of disillusionment of what Gartner would call that hype cycle of, AI went up and then now we're heading back down. I know you and I were having some banter. I think it was around a report that Battery had did around the sales and marketing impact of AI. And I think Battery came out and I pressed a little bit on this. Battery came out and said that headcount was going to be significantly impacted, particularly in marketing, of any go-to-market function, CX, sales, marketing. I think they were projecting like a 50% loss of headcount in the marketing function. And I push back on that because I don't, first of all, nobody knows. So I could be right, I could be wrong. They could be right, they could be wrong. Nobody really knows what the future holds. But have you seen any evidence so far of people changing their hiring plans with AI? I mean, maybe we're in inning 1 of a 9-inning game, and maybe it will come true. But I don't know. Well, like, what are you seeing there in terms of the numbers on AI?
I interestingly talked about this with Scott Brinker. Just recorded a podcast with him, and he, is far more of an expert and far closer to like some of the like cutting edge nature of AI. And his view, much like yours, was there's not enough there to see the headcount change, right? And his take was also a lot of this will be redeployed, right? That
Yes.
you have, inherent shortage of data analysts and business intelligence assistants, in companies, right? And what AI will enable is marketers to spend a lot more time doing reports and custom analysis, and it'll be this huge enabler. And perhaps, copywriting for that, like kind of third tier filler, e-commerce newsletter gets written by AI, but then you're spending more time running custom reports on conversion rates and precision targeting. And I'm personally of the view, like, I'm below Battery, I'm below McKinsey in terms of the ultimate margin savings of AI with respect to marketing and go-to-market in general. Some of that will be reinvestment, like Scott Brinker talked about, like you're just simply redeployed to higher and better use cases. And then there will also be other competing factors around, the competitive impact of this, and the stage 2 impact of this is, certain vendors might use this to reduce price. And in general, like, I'm not there yet. I haven't seen from the read-throughs of the things I use and have tried, right? Marketing is very messy and soft, and, there's a lot of alignment and coordination, issues that just do not lend themselves to like what generative AI actually does. And so, you know, you can bet on AI improving, but I think it's too early to say, okay, AI is going to take on all of these functions such that headcount needs go down.
Well, I think we're.
Oh yeah.
I was just going to say, I think we're right at time. Meg, any closing thoughts here on your side?
Oh, Matt, just thanks for giving us a lot of really good insights into some market trends and a different perspective on achieving benchmarks and what should be in those benchmarks and using those benchmarks. This is great. And I think the work you're doing at Cloudrating is really cool. Thank you for sharing it with us and your points of view.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I'll do my best in the chat windows here to kind of share some of our employment benchmarks, some of our top of the funnel benchmarks, ROI example, if that's helpful, if you're looking to go build your own.
Totally.
Just in general, like I do my best to cover a lot of this quantitative benchmark reports that come out from Battery or Iconic and the like. I go read all of these so you don't have to, because I do understand people have day jobs, right? And you should not be on Twitter, right, scouring what the latest KeyBank report said. John, you can, but not
Friday night. That's my Friday night.
Right. Not everyone can, right? You actually have like campaigns and programs to go run and people to manage that, you know, I try and go read those. I have a newsletter, and, you know, if you want to subscribe, no pressure, right? You'll kind of get a digest of those as they come out from various venture capital firms and Wall Street firms and the like.
Yeah, we should all, I think, I hate to say this, I think many of my colleagues in marketing would say we don't pay enough attention to that perspective. And it's a really important one. It's a different way of looking at things. It's a much more concrete and quantitative way of looking at things. And it's a much more contextual, you know, market contextual way of looking at things. So you're bringing something valuable to the table with that point of view. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So yeah, look, this has been fun. I'm again honored to have been invited on, and I've enjoyed getting to know you and collaborating with John on some projects and hopefully more in the future.
Awesome, Matt. Thanks for joining us early morning. Next week, we're doing the same exact thing. And I should actually, before I get into next week, this is the first broadcast that we've done on somebody else's broadcast line, and it's working effectively. I looked at it. Matt, we're broadcasting this live to your network on LinkedIn in addition to our network. So we've like doubled the reach. So amazing that what this technology can do. So congratulations on being the very first to successfully do that. Next week, we've got Anita Brereton, who will be joining us. She's the CEO and founder of Cabinet M, which does a lot of MarTech analysis. She's going to share with us what she's seeing from a trend perspective. Matt had just published some information on his LinkedIn post around the investments for different size companies in MarTech that may be worth looking at as well. So thanks again, and we'll see you next week.